What's good? You are now rocking with the Bigs alongside Nick Moreano. I am Herb Howard. We are checking in from here at Halas Hall. Nick, busy day at Halas Hall. We got to hear from all of the assistant coaches, including the offensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator, special teams coordinator, and associate head coach and wide receivers coach, Antwaan Randle. And then we got to go downstairs and sit for about 30-40 minute session at the table with all of the assistants on both sides of the ball. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, it's great access, so we figured why not just, share everything that we heard and, give it to you, the people, because there was a lot of good things, I think, that were said today.
Man, I think just overall, big picture for me, it felt like a staff that has a vision, like a shared vision of what they want to do, how they're going to go about it. They sounded all really competent and confident in what they want to do and what their plan is. I feel like the Bears just continue to show how well they've done this offseason, and one, forming that staff, and then two, accumulating some players that fit some needs.
And for me, it felt like there was just an excitement buzz in the building, and there's a lot of these guys are coming together for the first time being in this coaching staff. But when you hear Antwaan Randle,
oh my God,
he's fired up to be back in Chicago, and you could feel that not just from him, but some of the other coaches as well.
No, I think it goes back to what Coach Johnson was talking about a while back when he spoke about, I didn't surround myself with just my friends for the staff. I pulled from different places, different people, because I want to have a group of different ideas so we can figure out what is the best way to formulate this new version of the Chicago Bears. I think they're going to do that, man. What were some of the cooler things that you heard from the coaches today?
I think I want to start with Dennis Allen here, because there was a couple of his players just got extended with Kyler Gordon and TJ Edwards, and I got a chance to talk to Dennis Allen downstairs where they had these individual tables. And speaking about TJ Edwards, what stands out about him when you're watching tape? And Dennis was like, the intellect up here. You need to have that type of cerebral brain, mind to play that position. What I also thought was interesting, Herb, when talking about him and Tremaine Edmonds, he said that TJ, he'll play some Mike. Tremaine will play the weak outside linebacker. So there's going to be a little bit of, I think, position versatility and flexibility when it comes to his linebackers, and ultimately I think seeing what fits best for his defense.
I think he wants to attack offenses.
Yes.
And he's going to figure out where they're most vulnerable. How do I use my pieces to attack their pieces? And I think that if that means we're going to switch our linebackers today because I'd rather have TJ here or I'd rather have Tremaine there, then that's what he's going to do. He talked about the same thing with Kyler Gordon.
Yeah, he did. And I mean, the versatility with that guy, you can put him in the box, you can put him apparently, at a safety spot or even outside corner, which he's had experience at Washington doing. So a versatile threat that he's going to have, and obviously getting the extension that he did.
I know he's feeling good about the extension, certainly well-deserved. Shout out to Kyler for that. But I think that he's such a versatile piece that you can do so many things with. We've seen him come off the edge in pressure. We've seen him come up and run support. We know he can carry the slot. We've seen him play outside and going back to college, and Kyler's told me several times he still thinks he can play outside corner and would love the opportunity to do it. And I just think, it just allows you to move your pieces around. How do I attack this defense? Can you imagine having a scheme where the quarterback comes up to the line of scrimmage and when he sees two deep safeties and then he looks back again and Jaquan's all the way down in the box. Now you think you got one and then Kyler bails out of there and now you got two again. That's insane to be able to play with and move those guys around.
I'm smiling here, kind of getting excited about visioning this defense and just the different chess pieces and how they can move here. But that's what Dennis Allen gets to work with. And I think that's going to be exciting for him as he kind of learns this personnel, the players, and how to best utilize them. I also got a chance to just ask Dennis Allen about the defensive end position, Herb, and about the length. Because we kind of know at this point that Dennis Allen likes a certain size in the defensive end.
He likes those tall, big guys.
And he did not shy away from that. He's like, they do need to hit certain parameters in order to play in this defense. And he also said, you can draft certain guys, they go to certain schemes, and you just got to have the right vision. Back to what you were saying, as long as this coaching staff has the right vision for certain players, I think it's going to keep, again, these options open for them as they're looking to continue addressing that spot in the defense.
I think it starts to give you some insight on some of the players that may be eligible for the Bears to play that position coming out in the draft, and then maybe some guys that don't necessarily fit. I've been liking Pierce from Tennessee the entire offseason. He doesn't necessarily fit that mold, and so maybe he's not a guy they target, even though he does have some ability. Then you look at guys like Michael Williams, and he kind of does fit that mold. And so, it's kind of just kind of gives you some insight into the type of players that they like. I asked Coach Allen a similar question about that, specifically in regards to the Bears not really being in on Jack Sanborn and why that was the case. And he just said, man, we just want to get faster. We have to be faster, more athletic on that side of the ball. And so he didn't in any way diss Jack Sanborn. He was like, we just need to get faster and more athletic at those spots. And so that was probably the reason why they went a different direction. I also asked him about maybe his most important player or one of his most important players for sure, Jalen Johnson.
Yep, important for
Ask
sure.
him if he had to see anything from him during the spring and summer to find out whether or not Jalen is truly capable of going man-to-man coverage against the other team's best receiver on a week-in, week-out basis, and maybe travel across the formations with him if he's asked to do so. He couldn't speak higher of Jalen Johnson. He said, I've seen everything on tape I need to see from Jalen Johnson. He's a phenomenal football player. He says they are still trying to decide, and they're going to go through the process of figuring out when or how much he or any of them are going to travel in terms of moving along with that receiver and how much of that they're going to do. But he says if they ask him to, they're certain that Jalen could.
Well, I think he fits that man coverage ability. I think it also helps Tyreek Stevenson, who is a physical corner at heart. So if you're looking at how his defensive philosophy could impact some of these secondary players, there's a lot of options for them and what they can do.
Yeah, tons of guys they can use on that side of the ball. Flipping over to the other side, talking about the offensive line, we got some pretty good information there.
Yeah, Dan Roushar, I think, was very open about kind of just some of the players that he has. I asked him about Braxton Jones, and he said he could not be more impressed with the mentality he's taking on right now with, battling his injury and trying to get better and things like that. But he also said that it does provide like a setback for him.
Sure.
And, if he was healthy, he would be starting for that left tackle spot. But that's not the case at this point in time. So then my follow-up question is like, well, how do you feel about length when it comes to offensive tackles? And I didn't bring up the name Will Campbell. Dan Roushar did. He's like, I'm sure you're referring to him.
He knew what it was.
He knew exactly what it was. And he said when they put on the tape, you don't see a guy with short arms.
Sure.
You see a guy that's a technician. They highly grade him in terms of the marks that he's able to bring to a team if they were to, have a chance to draft him. But I think it just kind of shows you the mind of what Dan Roushar is thinking at the left tackle spot and the possibilities the Bears could have there.
Bears legend Tom Thayer was in on these conversations today, and I've listened to him talk about Will Campbell specifically in this conversation about arm length. And Tom is convinced that it doesn't matter. He gets sick of the conversation. He is as good of a resource for that conversation as anybody else I've heard speak about it. I know a lot of people are convinced that they do have to have 34, 35-inch arms. Cool. Tom Thayer said it don't matter, so I'm going to roll with what he said.
No, I think that's
if you see it on tape, you know what I mean?
That's the thing, and you do see it on tape with Will Campbell. So I think that's gonna, again, how they're evaluating that position. Obviously, you're gonna see who's available, but it seems like the Bears have done a lot of their homework on Will Campbell and what he could potentially provide for this team if he is selected by the Bears.
I told Coach Roushar, I said, listen, you probably had the best offseason out of anybody in this building. And he was like, yeah, man, we came into it, we were identifying the areas of need that we had. And he said, huge shout out to Coach Johnson and Ryan Poles for their leadership in that process, for how they went about acquiring those guys. You got to remember, Jonah Jackson and
Joe Tooney
were not free agents. They were not necessarily available when this process started, but through all the scouting work and the pro personnel department, identifying guys that they maybe could go out and get, and they were able to go do that. So he gave a lot of kudos to Coach and Ryan Poles. He said they got good guys, football players that have upped their ability to compete at a high level. So continue to be happy about what's happening on the offensive line. Anything else stood out from you about any of the coaches today?
You know what? I did also get a chance to hear from J.T. Barrett, obviously the quarterback's coach for the Chicago Bears. And, he brings that quarterback perspective and how that can help Caleb. And, essentially just told me, like, I've been in his shoes. Not a first overall pick, but a quarterback in this league. Yeah. So knowing how to kind of go about things. And he's just not getting, like, the coach speak. He's also getting someone that has actually been there at one point in time. But I also asked him, does it help that you're only 30 years old? You're not too far removed from the game, but you can relate with the younger players. And he absolutely said that it does help. Just, again, going through it, knowing what Caleb had to endure in his rookie season, and how to continue developing. So I think he'll be a huge asset to Caleb Williams as he goes into year 2.
Also had an opportunity to talk to Coach Eric Bieniemy, the Bears running back coach. Very thoughtful, a little long-winded with his answers. He's going to give you a really thoughtful answer, a detailed answer, and just talking to him about some of the things that we hear about him being a fiery coach, the accountability of his players. He said, listen, I tell all of my players, I'm going to be tough, but I'm going to be fair with you. He said, I'm going to be your biggest advocate and supporter, but if we turn on the tape and you are not meeting the standard, he says, that's when I'm going to get in your ass. And that's just what it is. And I think, listen, when you've had experience, you've coached the Adrian Petersons of the world, you know what it looks like. And when you don't see it, you got to call it out.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I love that mentality from Eric Bieniemy, and I think that will help DeAndre Swift and whoever they decide to maybe draft in a couple of weeks here.
He talked very, very highly of DeAndre Swift. Bears have put together a really, really good coaching staff. They had a lot of things to say glad we had the opportunity to bring it to the people, man, and just highlight some of the things that we heard today.
Yeah, and you know what? We'll be back here, next week, Herb?
Yeah, man,
Draft time and see that next group of players that come to Halas Hall and see how they can impact this team.
No more mocks. Just one more week of mocks, and then we'll have a real actual draft. Appreciate y'all for tuning in, man, checking in live from Halas Hall. It's Nick Moreano. I'm Herb Howard for the Bigs Media. It's us.